Mark's knuckles cracked as the dropship rumbled through Varion 7's atmosphere. If the human berserkers failed here, the ruthless Denobulan Empire would unleash a devastating new weapon, and the galaxy would fall under reptilian tyranny. 3 hours ago, a summons from the Galactic Council had pulled Mark from a war games simulation. Now, strapped into the dropship's crash chair, the decorated 35-year-old Special Forces soldier reviewed the briefing. 12 influential species outnumbered 3-1 were losing to the Denobulans. Advanced weaponry and superior tactics overwhelmed the frontline troops on Varion 7's blood-soaked battlefields. But the stakes had risen. A panicked council had just learned the Denobulans were developing a tide-turning superweapon in a fortified complex. ETA 2 minutes. The corporal's shout jarred Mark from his ruminations. His fingers tightened around the stock of his rifle. The council was desperate enough to send in the Berserkers, humanity's genetically enhanced warriors. A flash of turbulence rattled Mark's teeth. If the Berserkers couldn't destroy the Denobulan superweapon, the galaxy would fall. Trillions would be enslaved or perish under the Empire's cruel regime. Mark gritted his teeth, steeling his nerves. Failure was not an option. He'd stack Denobulan bodies to the rafters if needed. The Berserkers would drag the Denobulans to hell, one corpse at a time. The light turned green and the bay doors opened. Roaring wind whipped into the compartment. Mark lunged from his seat, sprinting for the edge. One way or another, this war ended today. Mark plummeted through the Varion 7 clouds, bracing as he hit the dirt. 3 other Berserkers landed around him. "Welcome to paradise, boys," Sergeant John Donnelly said. The 28-year-old demolitions expert already had his grenade launcher locked and loaded. "Can it, Reaper?" Corporal Alex Nguyen was already scanning the surroundings. Mark could see why the 24-year-old infiltration specialist had earned the nickname Ghost. Private First Class Jack O'Brien shouldered his massive railgun. The 22-year-old heavy weapons specialist was the team's youngest member, but he carried himself with a veteran's confidence. "Just point me at the bad guys, sir." Mark nodded at the squad, then tapped a button on his HUD. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a schematic of their target, a Denobulan facility buried deep beneath a fortified surface compound. "All right, Hammer, you're on Overwatch. Reaper, you're our doorman. Ghost, your recon. I'll take point." The display shifted, highlighting a group of red dots held in a sub-level chamber. "Secondary objective is a group of Arcturan scientists. Denobulans snatched them to work on this weapon. We get them out if we can." The team checked their gear, state-of-the-art Berserker combat exoskeletons that boosted strength, speed, and toughness to superhuman levels. Mark clutched a prototype cloaking device. It would get them inside unseen. As the squad prepped to move, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall humanoid shrouded in a cloak with glowing blue eyes. "I am Zalcor of the Varion race," the stranger said. "I have information you need, but I need something in return." Mark narrowed his eyes. The Varions had stayed out of the war so far. What was their angle? "There is an artifact in that facility, an object sacred to my people. Recover it for me, and I will tell you all I know of the Denobulan defenses and the weapon's location." Mark weighed his options. This smelled like a trap. But if the Varion was on the level, that intel could save a lot of lives. "Okay, Zalcor," Mark said. "You've got a deal." He turned to his squad. "Let's move out, Berserkers. Time to show the Denobulans what happens when you piss off the human race." The dropship shook violently as a swarm of Denobulan fighters unleashed a torrent of plasma bolts. Kalthar, the Arcturan pilot, rolled and juked the ship, dodging the deadly energy blasts. "We've got company," Mark shouted over the din of alarms. He raced to a turret, the rest of his squad on his heels. Mark strapped into the gunner's seat, training his sights on the nearest Denobulan ship. Reaper and Ghost manned the other turrets while Hammer fed ammo belts into the weapons. "Light 'em up," Mark growled. The turrets roared to life, spitting streams of tracer rounds at the attacking craft. The Berserkers' aim was true. Denobulan fighters exploded into balls of fire as the humans found their marks. Mark lined up the squadron leader in his crosshairs. The Denobulan ship juked and weaved, trying to evade, but Mark anticipated the move. He squeezed the trigger, walking a hail of bullets across the fighter's cockpit. The craft erupted in a gout of flame and shrapnel. But the victory was short-lived. A plasma bolt slammed into the dropship's hull, sending the vessel into a wild spin. Calthar fought with the controls, but it was no use. "We're going down. Brace for impact," the pilot yelled. The dropship careened toward Varion 7's battle-scarred surface, trailing smoke. The ship hit the ground hard, skidding and bouncing across the rocky terrain before slamming to a stop. Mark shook his head, ears ringing. He kicked open the crumpled hatch and staggered out, his squad stumbling after him. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as a platoon of Denobulan soldiers opened fire. At their head was Commander Zarthak, his eyes glinting with malice. The warlord was notorious for his brutality and cunning. Mark and his team scattered, finding cover among the wrecked dropship. The Berserkers returned fire, their enhanced reflexes and strength giving them an edge. Reaper lobbed a grenade into a cluster of Denobulans, the explosion sending shattered bodies flying. Ghost vanished, his cloaking device rendering him invisible, only to reappear behind the Denobulan heavy weapons team, dispatching them with quick, precise shots. Hammer opened up with his minigun, the high-caliber rounds tearing through the Denobulan ranks like tissue paper. Waves of reinforcements fell as the big man mowed them down. But Zarthak was not so easily beaten. The warlord called in his trump card, a phalanx of heavily armored mechs that stomped onto the battlefield, energy cannons blazing. The tide turned as the mech's firepower forced the Berserkers back. Mark knew they couldn't win this fight, not out in the open. "Fall back! Regroup at the boulders!" Mark ordered, laying down a barrage of covering fire. The team sprinted for a cluster of rocks as plasma bolts exploded around them. Mark scanned the terrain, looking for an out. There, a hidden hatch barely visible in the shadows of the boulders, an entrance to the underground complex. "There's our ticket in, boys," Mark said. "Let's go pay the Denobulans a house call." The Berserkers piled into the hatch, plasma bolts sizzling overhead as the mechs closed in. Mark yanked the hatch shut, cutting off the deluge of fire. In the sudden silence of the tunnel, Mark turned to his team. They were battered and singed, but still in the fight. Overhead, the muffled booms of the mech's footsteps reverberated through the rock. The way ahead was dark, lit only by the glow of alien machinery. Somewhere in this warren of tunnels was the Denobulan superweapon, and Mark and his squad were the only ones who could stop it. Mark chambered a round in his rifle. "Lock and load, Berserkers. We've got a galaxy to save." The Berserkers crept through the underground labyrinth, following the schematics from Zalcor. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as the squad's footsteps echoed off the metal walls. Suddenly, a burst of plasma fire erupted from the shadows. Mark snapped his rifle up, dropping a Denobulan guard with a quick double tap. More guards poured from a side passage, energy weapons blazing. "Contact left!" Reaper shouted, lobbing a frag grenade. The explosion ripped through the Denobulans, buying the team precious seconds. Push forward," Mark ordered. The Berserkers surged ahead, cutting down the survivors with precise shots. An automated turret popped from the ceiling, swiveling to track the humans. Hammer didn't hesitate. The big man shoulder-checked the turret, crushing it like a tin can. Sparks cascaded from the ruined machine as the team pressed on. Finally, they reached a heavy blast door. Ghost made quick work of the lock, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a group of haggard Arcturans, blinking in the sudden light. "Dr. Kelzar?" Mark asked. A grey-skinned Arcturan stepped forward. "Yes, I am Kelzar. Thank the gods you've come." Mark cut him free. "Doctor, we need to know about the Denobulan weapon." Kelzar shuddered. "It's a nanobot swarm, microscopic machines that can break down matter at the molecular level. With it, the Denobulans could disintegrate entire planets." "And the Varion artifact?" "It's the key to controlling the swarm. Without it, the weapon is useless." Mark nodded grimly. The stakes had just gotten a whole lot higher. He turned to Ghost. Get these people topside. We'll handle the package. As Ghost led the scientists away, Mark shouldered his rifle. Double time it, boys. That lab isn't going to breach itself. The remaining berserkers charged deeper into the facility. A final set of blast doors stood between them and their target. Reaper placed a shaped charge, and the team stacked up. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The door exploded inward. The berserkers stormed into the lab, weapons up. And there, waiting for them, was Zarthak and his elite guard. The Denobulan commander grinned, baring razor-sharp teeth. Welcome, Earthlings. You're just in time to witness the dawn of a new age. Mark raised his rifle. The only thing you're going to witness is the inside of a body bag. With a roar, the two forces clashed. Mark charged Zarthak, enhanced muscles propelling him forward. The Denobulan met him head-on, and they slammed together with bone-crushing force. Zarthak was fast, almost too fast to follow. His claws raked across Mark's armor, scoring deep gouges. But the berserker gave as good as he got, hammering the Denobulan with punishing strikes. Around them, the lab dissolved into chaos. Reaper and Hammer laid down a withering hail of fire, driving the Denobulan elites back. Consoles sparked and shattered as stray shots struck home. But Zarthak was a veteran of 100 campaigns. He pressed his attack, forcing Mark back with a relentless onslaught. The Denobulan's tail lashed out, catching Mark across the face. Stars exploded in his vision. Zarthak lunged, claws extended for the killing blow. Mark braced for the end. Suddenly a plasma bolt hit Zarthak square in the chest. The Denobulan crumpled. A smoking hole punched through his armor. Mark looked up to see Zalcor lowering a plasma rifle, its barrel glowing cherry red. "Looked like you could use a hand," the Varion said, stepping over Zarthak's body. Mark raced across the laboratory, his eyes locking onto the nanobot swarm prototype. Reaper and Hammer fell into step beside him, their weapons trained on the device. "Let's blow this thing and go home," Reaper said, pulling a demolition charge from his belt. But before they could reach the swarm, a burst of psychic energy slammed into them, sending them flying. Mark crashed into a bank of computers, sparks cascading around him. Zalcor strode forward, his eyes glowing with eldritch power. "I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Earthlings," he said, his voice echoing in their minds. "The Varians have great plans for that device." Mark staggered to his feet, his rifle leveled at Zalcor. "What are you talking about? We had a deal." Zalcor laughed, the sound grating against Mark's ears. "Did you really think we would let the Galactic Council and the Denobulan Empire continue their petty squabbles? The Varians have been manipulating this conflict from the start, weakening both sides so that we can step in and take control." The Varian gestured to the artifact, now pulsing with an eerie blue light. "This device is the key. With it we can control the nanobot swarm, and with the swarm we can enslave the galaxy. All will bow before the might of the Varian Empire." Mark's finger tightened on the trigger. "Not on my watch, you son of a bitch." Zalcor smirked. "I'll give you one chance, human. Join us and rule the galaxy at our side. Refuse and die with the rest of your pathetic council." Mark's answer was a hail of gunfire. Zalcor stumbled back, his psychic shield absorbing the bullets. The Varian snarled, lashing out with a wave of telekinetic force. Mark gritted his teeth as the invisible sledgehammer struck him, cracking his armor. He pushed through the pain, charging at Zalcor. The two collided in a clash of psychic might and berserker rage. Reaper and Hammer scrambled for the artifact, but a flash of light heralded the arrival of a squad of Varian soldiers. Plasma bolts filled the air as the two sides opened fire. Reaper lobbed a grenade, the explosion sending Varians flying. Hammer laid down a withering barrage, his railgun punching through Varian shields like paper. But the Varians kept coming, teleporting in reinforcements faster than the humans could cut them down. Reaper went down, a plasma bolt burning through his chest. Hammer fell moments later, his gun clicking empty as the Varians swarmed him. Mark hammered at Zalcor, his enhanced strength driving the Varian back. But Zalcor was powerful, centuries of psychic mastery at his command. The Varion's mental blasts pounded at Mark's defenses, seeking a crack in his iron will. With a roar of desperation, Mark launched himself at Zalcor. He tackled the Varion, sending them both crashing into the nanobot swarm. The device ruptured, a cloud of glittering motes spilling into the air. Zalcor screamed as the nanobots swarmed him, his psychic shields useless against the molecular onslaught. The Varion's body dissolved, his essence absorbed by the ravenous machines. Mark staggered back, his armor corroded and sparking. He turned to his team, ready to give the order to evacuate. The words died in his throat. Reaper and Hammer stood before him, their eyes glowing with the same eldritch light as Zalcor's. The Varion's final psychic command had turned them, subverting their minds to his will. "Reaper, Hammer, stand down," Mark pleaded, his rifle wavering. "Don't make me do this." But his friends were gone, replaced by soulless puppets. They raised their weapons, aiming at Mark's head. Time seemed to slow as Mark's finger tightened on the trigger. The rifle kicked again and again, the bullets tearing through his friend's armor, through flesh and bone. Reaper and Hammer crumpled, their minds free in death. Mark fell to his knees, his rifle clattering to the floor. He had won. The Varion plan was in ruins, the nanobot swarm destroyed, the artifact nothing more than shattered crystal. But the cost, God, the cost. Tears streamed down Mark's face as he cradled his friends' bodies, their blood mingling on the cold metal floor. The Galactic Council would hail him as a hero, the savior of the galaxy. But as Mark knelt there, surrounded by the wreckage of his victory, he knew the truth. There were no heroes here, only survivors and the ghosts of the fallen. The medal they pinned on his chest felt like a lead weight, dragging him down into the abyss of his grief. He had saved the galaxy, but lost everything that mattered, and as the cheers of the council echoed in his ears, Mark couldn't help but wonder. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.